Are you looking to take on a new spiritual practice, but there's so many and you don't know how to go about telling which one will actually work for you? If so, then stay tuned to watch the rest of this video. Hello, 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 Mosaic Souls. Hey Mosaic Souls, this is Rachael Alexander, artist and Mosaic Soul mentor, aka spiritual teacher with flair. And today I wanted to share with you 5 elements of an effective spiritual practice. So the reason why I wanted to talk about this topic today is that many of the people in my circle, the people who I love serving, and the people who I feel called to serve at this time, they are looking to develop spiritual practices or they're diving more deeply into their spiritual awakening journey, into their spiritual journey, and they're embarking on a spiritual path. And with the spiritual path, as with everything else, there's so many different options in which to tell you how to reconnect with yourself, how to connect with who and what you truly are, and how to tap into this intuition, this sixth sense, really your first sense. And it's so many different ways that you can do it. And so I wanted to give you a blueprint to tell you how to determine whether or not a spiritual practice will actually work for you and if it's actually worth continuing to pursue. And sometimes, even as a caveat, you might pursue one spiritual practice, let's say meditation, but then you sort of evolve out of that a little bit and you move on to something else, maybe like moving meditation, or maybe you get into crystals, or maybe you do more nature, or maybe you get into altar work, or maybe you get into divination tools and stuff like that. So there's so many different ways and different doorways, if you will, to get onto the spiritual path. So let me break down for you the 5 elements of an effective spiritual practice. So the first element that helps you to create an effective spiritual practice is that it connects you / tunes you into the real you, your higher self, your soul. It helps you to rediscover and remember who you truly are. So any true spiritual practice really helps you to tap into that which you truly are. If you're embarking on something that has you sort of looking outside of yourself for answers, which can kind of come, you can turn or sort of exploit or distort any spiritual tool, really any spiritual practice, right? Like tarot cards, a lot of times people will look to the tarot cards thinking, or dowsing, right, pendulum dowsing or something like that, thinking that the answer is coming from the pendulum, or thinking that the answer is coming from the tarot cards, when really it's just coming from your higher self. So you can distort any spiritual practice, but a true spiritual practice will help you tap into who you truly are and help you to remember who you truly are. So that's the first element, the most critical element, I believe, of any effective spiritual practice. The second is it puts the ego in its place, right? It puts the ego in check, right? So in one of my other videos, I talked about the ego. I'll link it up above here. And I also talked about in that video how the ego kind of keeps you stuck, right? But one of the things about having a spiritual practice that's truly effective is that it puts the ego in check. It gives you awareness of all the different aspects of you, your spiritual self, your emotional self, your mental self, right? Your physical self. It helps you to become all these aspects of your multi-dimensional self, right? And one of those aspects is becoming aware of the ego, right? Aware of this sort of conditioned part of you that's there while you're in human form. And it puts it in its place, because once you become aware, that first element of who you truly are, you recognize that you're not the ego, right? You're not just this human. You're not just the sort of egoic or conditioned mind or conditioned belief systems that show up over and over, right? So that's the second element of really an effective spiritual practice, is that it puts the ego in its place, which meaning that it makes the ego a servant rather than the master of your life. The third element of an effective spiritual practice is that it elicits self-trust, inner knowing, and divine innate wisdom that's within you. So what do I mean by that? A lot of times we live in a world where we're so conditioned to not trust our inner voice. We're so conditioned to not listen to our higher selves. We're so conditioned not to listen to our first sense, which is our intuition. And we're so conditioned to take information in through our five senses, right? And determine whether or not something will be successful and stuff like that based upon just our five senses. And our five senses are so limited, whereas our sixth sense, really our first sense, which is our intuition, is tapped into infinite potential realities, as well as it's tapped into the whole like vibrational landscape that our five senses can't even tune into, right? And so an effective spiritual practice helps you to develop self-trust, right? It helps you to tap into that divine innate wisdom that's within you, right? Having this inner knowing of moving in the right direction because you have this trust within yourself that you're making the quote unquote right decision. You're making a decision that's in alignment with your heart's calling, in alignment with your soul's desires, right? So that's the third element, is that it elicits self-trust, inner knowing, and your inner divine wisdom. The fourth element of an effective spiritual practice is that it's not rigid, right? But it's more so fluid and allows for a degree of flexibility and playfulness. So I'm really about, having flexibility and playfulness because there's a natural current to life, right? There's seasons to life. There's different elements and experience that we've come to explore and play on this playground or this school called Earth, right? And so anytime you become rigid or dogmatic about something, you are externalizing your power into something external outside of yourself, right? So sometimes we need rigidity, sometimes we need to have a schedule just to sort of recondition ourselves to tune more into who we truly are. But once that conditioning of old past belief systems or egoic consciousness is lessened and diminished and put in its place, anytime you become super rigid about something like, oh no, I feel bad because I didn't meditate today, or oh no, I didn't go out in nature, or oh no, I didn't connect with my spirit guides. Anytime you become really rigid, then the spiritual practice is no longer serving you. You are becoming dogmatic about something when your soul, your higher self, your spirit guides, they ain't tripping about that, right? Like your true self is not tripping about that. Only the egoic mind. What is happening in this scenario is that the ego is becoming spiritual. So a lot of times people talk about the ego as that, oh, it's only evil and stuff. No, you can actually develop a spiritual ego where it takes on a new identity as, oh, I'm spiritual, and as a spiritual person, I do X, Y, and Z. And if I don't do X, Y, and Z, then I'm not spiritual, right? Like this is whole like dogmatic BS that comes around it, right? So the true signifier of an effective spiritual practice is that it's not rigid, it's very flexible, and it's playful, right? And the playfulness aspect of it is that when you're meditating or when you're doing yoga or when you are doing divination, it's not this seriousness around it like, if I do this, then something good will happen. No, it's more so of this sort of movement into the world that's already sort of like in alignment with who and what you truly are, and you're just expressing yourself through this tool, through this practice, by tuning into who you truly are, right? And it's not this sort of like rigidity, like if I don't do something bad will happen, right? So there has to be a level of flexibility with it, and it really depends on where you are in your spiritual journey, right? Sometimes if you are coming from monkey mind consciousness, egoic consciousness, you need that rigidity. Maybe 40 days, 60 days, 6 months of you really sitting down and doing some journaling, right? Or sitting down and really doing some meditation or whatever. You need that sort of period in time to sort of recondition yourself. That's just part of like habit patterns, right? When we've been conditioned for so long, 20 plus years, for doing something that no longer serves us, we have to have this sort of incubation period to where we take on new practices that really serve us, and that's totally fine. But after you've found like that you're on this spiritual path and you're no longer seeking per se, but you are finding who you truly are, then you can let go of the rigidity, if you see what I'm saying. So the fifth and final element of an effective spiritual practice is that it unlocks and opens up the door to allow more of your heart and soul's desires. So how does it do that, right? An effective spiritual practice helps to unlock and open up the door to who and what you truly are and what you desire at soul level. It does this by addressing the shadow aspects of you and reintegrating those aspects of you into the light being, into the love being that you truly are, right? So an effective spiritual practice doesn't just make you feel good all the time, make you feel high all the time, right? That is sort of an after effect. But it also integrates the shadow aspects of you, right? And when I talk about shadow aspects, I mean the sort of darker aspects, the parts of you that you consider negative, the sort of negative emotions, the blocks or obstacles, inner blocks or obstacles, the mental movies and the mental meanings that we give things that no longer are in alignment with our souls. An effective spiritual practice addresses those aspects of you and helps you to heal those aspects of you and reintegrate them into who and what you truly are. So you're no longer operating from egoic consciousness. You're no longer operating from your lower self, right? And so those are really the 5 elements of an effective spiritual practice. So I want to reiterate what those are. The first one is that it connects you / tunes you into the real you, your higher self, your soul. It helps you to rediscover, remember who you truly are. The second one is that it puts the ego in its rightful place. The third is that it elicits self-trust, inner knowing, and divine innate wisdom. The fourth is that it's not rigid, but more so fluid and allows for a degree of flexibility or playfulness. And fifth is that it unlocks and opens up the door to allow more of your heart and soul's desire by addressing the shadow aspects of you and reintegrating them into the love and light being that you truly are. So I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. Which of the 5 elements do you resonate with below? So let me know, out of these 5 elements, which most resonate for you as far as developing and cultivating a spiritual practice. Let me know in the comments below. And as always, flow with what feels good and let go of what doesn't, because you are divine. You are a divine being, and your soul knows exactly what you came to explore and experience while on the playground / school earth. And remember, what you conceive is what you'll receive. What you expect is what you'll get. And however you feel is what'll become real for you. So vibrate higher, and I will chat with you guys next time. Peace, love, and light. Want to build a solid spiritual practice that actually works? Then check out the essentials of building a solid spiritual practice, modern spirituality that actually works, and the link in the description below.